Much pleasure in introducing to you David Brand, who has been a personal friend for at least 40 years. We play bridge together irregularly, but our families grew up together, and I'm delighted that he can come and speak on one of his favourite topics today. David graduated in science at Cambridge and conducted postgraduate research on fuel cells. And he came to Australia in 1969 and spent his whole career working in CSIRO, with CSIRO. He worked in fuel cell mechanisms initially, and then went on to lead-acid batteries and established the CSIRO Novel Battery Technologies Group in the late 1970s. He co-invented the Ultra battery in 2003, which was put into commercial production. David tells me that over 1 million of these batteries have been sold. David became CSIRO's scientific advisor on hydrogen and renewable energy until his retirement in 2008. However, he remains active within the CSIRO organization as an honorary research fellow, which means you do a lot of work and they don't pay you, and has served as the chief energy scientist of the World Solar Challenge since its inception in 1987. So who better to speak to you today than David? Please welcome him.
Thank you very much, Ken, and good morning. I didn't expect such a crowd. I'm somewhat nervous at the thought of all you distinguished gentlemen. I want to talk to you about something that occurs in Australia, but is little known in Australia, but it's huge around the world. The last event of this particular thing, I think, got something like 400 million hits on whatever they call it, the web. Anyway, to start from the very beginning, on the 7th of January 1983, a very strange, Phil, could you put the next slide on, please? A very strange looking vehicle trundled into the Opera House. It had just completed 452 kilometres travelling from Perth on pure sunshine, and it took them 20 days to do this, which was 8 days faster than the first car to cross. But of course the first car to cross didn't have quite as good as roads as these two gentlemen did it. One was Hans Thorstrup, who's a very famous Australian adventurer, a bit of a wild man, I love him dearly. And the other one, of course, was Larry Perkins, who's well known in the motoring field. They both won Bathurst, and I'm not a petrol head, but I'm told that's very important to win Bathurst. Okay, this bathtub on wheels had a photovoltaic array, some bicycle wheels, 4 batteries, 2 electric motors, and it trundled along. It is regarded as the very first solar car ever to appear. Hans did this because he wanted to point at then worry over diminishing oil supplies. Of course, the big rollover's gone away. But he wanted to draw attention to the fact that we can't keep burning fossil fuels and emitting carbon dioxide and other things. And this was really before climate change and all the arguments over that really took place. He was ahead of his game. And as Victor Hugo said, nothing in this world is so powerful as an idea whose time has come. And it genuinely had come. He decided that he was going to pursue this and have a competition for solar vehicles, but he wasn't going to go round and round a racetrack as these Formula One things do, but he was going to have a real test, a test of endurance. And so he decided to put together a team, and I was, thank God I was, it's been wonderful. He invited me to look after the battery side of things. In 1987, the first event appeared. And we took as the course, next one please, we took the Stuart Highway, which goes from Darwin in the south straight the way through to Adelaide, 3,000 odd kilometres. It's named after John McDougall Stuart, who finally after 5 attempts went from sea to sea, coast to coast. Took him 9 months. The first car took how many days? 51 days to trundle over the sand hills and the rugged plains of South Australia. So nowadays, our solar cars can do it in just about 4 days, but we'll get to that later. It's really challenging because these cars have to suffer the ever-changing surface of a hot desert road. They have to negotiate some of the most inhospitable and spectacular terrain on Earth. They have to rely on a fuel supply that's dependent on the vagaries of the wind, of the weather. If the sun doesn't shine, they don't get any fuel. And of course, they also have to look after the intense heat and bushfires and dust and willy-willies, which are these mini tornadoes. Also, down that track, we have very fickle Australian wildlife. Next one, Phil. That's my wife, cuddling a joey because its mother had been killed by a road train. And then when we come to road trains, this is another big problem. There's a little solar car and there's a 32-ton, whatever it is, truck, 3 trailers. Actually, we have a stability car. We used to have a stability test for solar cars. We ran them around Hidden Valley up. Is it called Hidden Valley? Up in Darwin? Happy Valley. No, Hidden Valley. And we had a truck going one way and the solar car going the other way. The truck had to go past the solar car at 70 kilometres an hour. And the solar car had to be stable. It didn't have to be sucked in or blown out. Thank God that never happened in either case. Right, so the challenge really, next slide please. The challenge actually encourages competitors to develop a synergy between solar power, battery power, lightweight materials and structures, elegant aerodynamics, high performance motors and advanced power electronics. So it's not a race. In fact, we're not allowed to call it a race because you can't race on the nation's highways. It's a test of efficiency, performance and endurance. And it's spiced with a strong element of adventure, believe you me. Simple regulations were set in the first one in 1987. Cars, they still have to do this, travel between 8 o'clock and 7 o'clock each day. They camp wherever they stop, they camp. They have an observer with them to make sure they're not misbehaving any of the regulations. Before the event, they're subjected to dynamic scrutineering, as I mentioned, stability and brake test. That's quite hysterical, some of the cars, because they're not quite up to it. They all have to fit within a box, which is the size of an average large family car. And so we have, that's another thing where there's a science faculty for the event. Under batteries, we have an incredibly clever man from the University of New South Wales. He's an astrophysicist, Professor John Story. He looks after all the electronics and electrical things. And Peter Putney in South Australia is a mathematician, and he's the one that works out the angle of the seats and what to have all this sort of stuff, which is well beyond me. But so the essence of this World Solar Challenge, just a matter of fact, fitting in a box. Sorry if I'm a bit hesitant. I've had this virus for 3 weeks and it's wandering around in my head. Fitting in this box, I want you to realise that under favourable conditions, the state-of-the-art array, and the array's got to fit within that box, a solar car can travel 8.5 kilometres in 4 minutes. It takes to toast 2 slices of bread, and remarkably with the same power consumption. That's how efficient these cars are. And that's what we're trying to show the automotive field, that they've got to get their cars more efficient, which means less emissions. These cars will never be practical, but there's been big spin-offs, as you will see, in the rest of the world. The batteries, let's get on to batteries. The batteries must be rechargeable, and if they wanted to swap over a battery for any reason, a time penalty was set. Otherwise, you might have cars slipping in a new pack at the last minute. So I had to set severe penalties depending on the type of battery that was being used. Let's get on to the first 1987 event. We had no idea who would turn up. Well, that's Dick Smith. Dick Smith was there with his Australian Geographic one. We also had the hippies from Hawaii, that had a spectacular first day and then disappeared in a cloud of smoke of some strange substance. I'm going to digress and keep up too much time, but the classic was when these hippies went into the Fanny Bay Sailing Club, and there's all these Aussies up there, and there's these guys coming in, and this Aussie said, "What do you do?" He said, "Oh, I lay concrete and path. He said, "You're a grano worker?" Yeah, so he went off and did this fellow's driveway for him. And of course we had this man here, the famous German who brought his car in a suitcase, put it all together and went down. He finally finished, and the lovely Swiss over here, the only car ever to have an accident. It ran into a lady in Alice Springs. There's only one traffic light between Darwin and Darwin and Adelaide. If you go around the outer road, of course they went through the light, didn't they? They still send her actually a present every year. It's nice, isn't it? And this was a mad Japanese who was inventing these things. But there was one car that stood out, which was the next one, which was unbelievable, and that was the General Motors Sunraiser. $25 million of it. $25 million. The head of GM came out. I had a pee with him in Barrow Creek Gentlemen's Laboratories. That was an interesting experience. They were interested in showing, actually, they had two main interests. They wanted to bring all their tier suppliers together, Hughes Corporation, all those people in a sort of big body, you know, we're going to be a good body of men, we're going to do this, it's an example, typical Americans. And they also wanted to get one up on Ford and Chrysler, of course. And the other thing was they did it, and this is a very important thing about this event, they did it because they were looking to hire good students to be in their company. In fact, the kids that do this all get jobs. Tesla, as I mentioned later, are almost packed with these people who've been on this event, including a lot of Australians. There's me in my pink shorts by the side. And this is where we have to, at the end, myself and my two colleagues from CSIRO, we have to check the batteries are what they were when they started. Let's have a look at closer at the anatomy of a solar car. Now, very, very quickly, this is a solar cell, and I'm sure a lot of you have them on your roof. This is how it's made. We take silicon and carbon, we melt it, cast it into a cylinder, slice it, make it into this pseudo-square film, put it in a panel goes up there, collectors, anti-reflector, collector outside, sun shines, you get electricity. The very first solar cell was actually, the very first person to tell us that you could get sunlight, electricity from sunlight was Becquerel in 1839. The first solar cell was done in the Bell Labs in 1954, and it only did 6% efficiency, only 6% of the electricity was turned into power. In 1987 we had 16%, 2013 these silicon cells were up to 25%, and then there's another range of cells called the triple junction. Next one, don't get too worried by this. Over time, our eyes have only been developed, over millions of years, or whatever mankind's been on the earth, our eyes are trained just to see the visible part of the spectrum. But there's all this at the part of the spectrum which can be used to collect electricity. So we join together cells with different components, gallium indium phosphate, gallium indium arsenic, that can draw in energy from these parts. And so the efficiency goes up. The world record is 44.4%. I have to say they're very, very expensive, these. They're the ones that they have on spacecraft and satellites. But solar cars do use them if they've got sponsors who are willing to invest in them. So, here we go then. Oh, there's another way you can improve the efficiency of a solar cell, of a photovoltaic cell, is have a condensing lens here, and you can use just a little bit of photovoltaic material, which means you cut the cost down. The problem is, you've got to make sure that these ones are always at 90 degrees to the sun, and they're kept cool. You can see how hot it was getting there at the receiver. This is the Colombian team, who were more intent on keeping themselves cool rather than the cells. But I think it's a nice picture. We've had just under 40 countries participate, and we're coming to have 500 cars that have been here. Russians are coming this time. There's snow on their roofs, maybe. Let's go, next one. Now, batteries. This is the thing that's in all the public eye at the moment, and I have to tell you, if you listen to the radio and read the newspapers, there's an awful lot of hype and misinformation that's given out about batteries. I can wax lyrical for many hours on the subject, but I won't. The first batteries that came were here in the early days, lead acid, nickel, cadmium, nickel iron, then we went to nickel zinc, silver zinc, and then nickel metal hydride, they were the Prius batteries, then lithium ion, that's what you have in the phones, and then then plastic lithium ion, which is a modification of that, and lithium iron phosphate, which is another modification but not so powerful and it's cheaper. The interesting thing that we're interested about, as indeed is Apple and other people, is how much energy you can store per kilogram. You want it to store as much as possible and be as light as possible. In the submarine, you don't mind. It can be as heavy as possible because you want some ballast. So, lead acid always heavy because the element lead is 207 and it's a very heavy element. It's only 40 watt-hours per kilogram. Nickel zinc was improvement, and so was silver zinc. Silver zinc was used in the first event by, that was the best battery available, 120 watt-hours per kilogram. It's used for torpedoes. It's not very rechargeable. You really don't want a torpedo coming back to you many times. Lithium ion, we were the very first event to use a live laboratory in rugged conditions for the lithium ion battery. That was in 1991. It actually was invented by, I know both these people extremely well, by John Goodenough in America, who should get a Nobel Prize, and a good friend of mine from another university I shan't mention, Stan Whittingham. So gradually the teams moved over to lithium ion. This is how it works, we won't worry about that now. But then plastic became quite good. Next slide, just gently one by one. So we had the winner in 87 was silver zinc. Next one, Phil, please. Then we moved up to 207, where plastic lithium ion was now at 191 watt-hours. Next one, please. Then we had lithium ion itself, which was 241, and next one. And now today, they're both about the same. The lithium plastic ones are the ones in your phone, the lithium ions are the ones in the Tesla. There's reasons for that we won't go into. So, I've got ahead of myself, haven't I? Next slide. Right, now, safety is a very important thing with batteries. I want to emphasise this point. By the way, I'm speaking as David Rand, not as CSIRO. There is policy about what I have to say. If I say I'm from CSIRO, I'm not paid, so I'm not a member. Okay? Nickel cadmium, there's actually myself in those horrible shorts putting it out. Fortunately, I'd been on an extinguisher course the week before, so I knew what to do. And nickel cadmium again, we then banned nickel cadmium from the event because cadmium is a toxic material and it's not a good thing chucking nickel cadmium back into a landfill. Then we come to the next one. That was the Honda, which had a double-seated car with silver zinc, and when they took the lid off, these were just about to boil over and spew hot caustic soda everywhere, and believe you me, it goes through the skin extremely fast. Okay, next one. Now, we come to the famous 2011 with the Philippines. We had to stop at Tennant Creek because the road was sealed by the police because of a bushfire further down. They went off to the pub and left their car cooking in the sun, and the lithium batteries exploded and caught fire. Next day I was going down and the iridium phone went, and the fire brigade superintendent from Tennant Creek said, "It's still burning." I said, "Yes, it will do." I said, "You've got to just wait for it." Half an hour later he said, "We disposed of the problem." I said, "What have you done?" He said, "We shoved it down a disused mine shaft." Whereupon I said, "I hope there's no protected bat down there or anything like that." Then we had the whoops, come back. Oh, all right, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. This is the Belgians. This is not a good way to put out a lithium battery by using a water extinguisher. Lithium's quite reactive with water. So we've had another fire. This is to give you some idea of what happens to a solar car when its battery catches fire. These are the Malaysians. Now I told them to have a shovel. I told them to have a shovel as a safety, but really it was to dig a loo every night because they came in handy. These are the Durham boys in the background, so you can see what's happening. And you'll never put it out. You'll never put it out, because when a lithium battery fire goes, it's optional. Okay, Phil, that gives some flavour. But in the spirit of the event, and there's a good spirit of the event, teams help each other. Mind you, a team's not going to help someone who might be a little bit better than them, but they do. So after the event, when they all finally camped together somewhere, they all got together and put the Malaysians back on the road, and they ended up in 26th position. The only problem was, while all these other teams are running around doing it, the Malaysians were having a party or Ramadan or something like that, and they didn't do anything. Right, now let me show what happens to a lithium battery. And this is very important if you're thinking of putting them on your house. Don't short circuit a lithium battery. This is the current coming up. This is the lithium battery. Here comes the current. Watch the battery. This is what you could have in your Tesla or your Powerwall. Oh, it's starting to smoke. Okay, that's what can happen if a lithium battery is shorted. It doesn't happen with a lead battery because there's an aqueous solution. So it does worry me when I hear on the radio and TV and in the papers that we're going to have massive numbers of these batteries all over the place. I just hope to God they're bought from a reliable supplier and they're also installed, and that no bush mechanic starts to fiddle with them, because it's not a good idea at all. Right, a quick and the other source of fire, of course, is the bushfires that we have, which, how much into time, Ken? What time is it? We're all right. Wait, go back to that. That's the bushfires. Go back if you can, Phil. These are the bushfires, and you know, there is the stupid idiots, these Dutch, who are going, here they are there. What happens if a road train was coming the other way? We didn't get those pictures till after the event, had we? The stewards would have done something rather dramatic on these fellows. We can set penalties for stupidity. Okay, so this is very confusing, and I don't expect to. What I plotted here is really for other audiences, but what I want to say is, as we progress up the events, the arrays get more and more efficient. The batteries get better and better at storing electricity, and we always want to keep what they've got to be down to the same base. Okay? So in case of batteries, I always want 5 kilowatt hours in that car. It may mean a lesser weight, because we want to record the march of progress, and really there's been dramatic progress. So up here where lithium is 40, now it's down to 21. Where the panels were 8, they're now down to 6 for silicon and 3 square meters for other technologies. So we're shortening down, making it tougher and tougher and tougher for the kids every time. They are kids now. In the past they were many, many companies. Toyota, Ford, Mitsubishi, General Motors, Mazda, all have been in the event. And Tesla, independently. I'll get back to that in a minute. So we make it tougher and tougher, because what's the point of having an event? What's the point of, you know, Formula One, where you just run around every time, and it's the car that does it, and not the driver, really, by and large. In this case, it's a question of the car and the team, because you've got to balance that energy in and take it out just using the sun, and it requires some very, very clever strategy to do that, to keep running at a good speed. In 2013, all the cars that were doing well were looking the same, with a wheel in front and 2 at the back. So we said, we've had enough of this, we're going to have 3 new classes. The Challenger class is going to look more like a car, and we must have 4 wheels. Then we had a cruiser class. We say we've got to have at least more than 2 people in the car. We want to have cars that can travel with lots of people in it. And then there was the adventure class for the old boys that came back for a party and trundled down the road. Okay, so let's see what happened. In 2013, this is a lineup of the cars at the Hidden Valley. Challengers are solar radiation only. The cruisers, we allowed them to have mains charging at 2 points, Tennant Creek and Alice Springs. But if they charge, we measured how much charge they put into the car, and that came into one of Peter Putney's magic equations to see how efficient they were. It all got put in. So the more you charge, it wasn't a good idea, and I'll come back to a subject on that as well. And they had an array, as I said, of that and that. Right, okay, Ken. Phil, please. Now, that particular event, there are 2 teams that have done extremely well. Australia won it once, when the Americans crashed before the start. That was a good start. And the Dutch and the Japanese couldn't get their car in because they hadn't gone through the proper bill of lading or loading or whatever it is. That's a problem. Bringing these lithium batteries into Australia is a big problem for the kids. This is Tokai, and they were only, I think, 30 kilometres from the centre of Adelaide when the weather hit, and they were stuck there. They were using lithium ion. Next one. This is the Dutch. They decided to leave a little bit of space on their array, a little tiny bit of space. They were allowed a certain number of square metres to put in these concentrator cells. So they put in a small area of concentrator cells, which gave them an extra 550 watt hours, which was enough to get them past that bad weather. There were 360 of the cells. They engraved every one, so we had to look at a magnifying glass to see they were all there. There's me. But, as you remember, these cells will only work if you have the panels at 90 degrees work well to the sun. So at night time, they took their panel off and they were allowed to charge between dawn and the start, and between the finish and dusk. They were allowed to charge, and we put the canopy over. So they had these out, and they gained that little bit of electricity. Now, the rule, the law, the regulations, and I'm a scientist, I'm not allowed to question the regulations when it comes to a matter of dispute. That's the stewards. We have judges and God knows what, law judges on this. I would have thought that that was not within fair play, because they said, oh, but we carried them down in the car. Yeah, but you're not collecting, these things are outside when they come out. You could have umbilical cords with lots and lots and lots and lots of these. But the Dutch had one trump card. This gentleman has been the manager before. Unfortunately, he's died since. This is Professor Wubbel Ockels, the Vice President of the European Space Agency and an astronaut. And he was very, very aggressive, saying, oh, we did. And it's very difficult to argue with a man like that. In fact, I've got a historical photograph of, he wanted to go to the loo behind a bush, and he's holding some laboratory paper. And there I am arguing with an astronaut who's been around the world 200 times, saying he's cheating, you know. I'm a soccer referee. And anyway, the Japanese were very obliging, which is amazing. They said, we don't mind. But we've now got a regulation to prevent that, believe you me. Let's move on. So the Dutch won again. Next one. These are the cruiser classes that turned up. And we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There were a variety of things from various countries. This was the one that stuck out the most. Dutch again. Holland's very, very keen on photovoltaics and renewable energy. Every time I go to Amsterdam, it's raining. I don't understand it. Mind you, they don't have very many hills and bushes to sort of obscure the sun. Next line. So this is how it went stellar. It went. Well, this is this equation. But in the end, it went down the whole 983 person miles. So every time there was somebody in the car, or kilometres I mean, every time there's somebody in the car, that counts as 1 kilometre. If there's 2 kilometres. And it went down in 40 hours, and it only consumed 64 kilowatt hours of energy. It was quite remarkable. That's all it took in from the mains. And of course, it's now gone on to be a registered car in Holland. We're being forward again. Now we come to the latest event. The next event's in October. It's our 30th anniversary, and we have 57 cars already registered. It's going to be a nightmare. So that's how many cars have been in so far. Here we are again, all set up for the official photograph. Next one, Phil. Now, these are the cruisers. You see how much they've changed now. Germany, they're great, the German boys. They come up with the most imaginative designs. They're never really going to win. But this car went around the world, all the way around the world, to various places. They should have won, but they blew it for a reason. University of New South Wales has always been a very good team, but typical Aussie lads, they're sort of a wee bit disorganised. And Ardingly High School, a very posh school in West Sussex, and this is the Houston High School. Ardingly High School almost took the trophy. How embarrassing for the event. They had a bottle of pins in the back, by the way. The physics master is quite incredible. He comes from my hometown, actually. he's banned from coming to the event this year, but the school's not letting him for some reason or other. He put a couple of dice in the back, you know, to make it all silly. And the chaplain of the school said that's against God, that's a game of death, God wouldn't like it, you know, so he had to take them down and he put them on again. They only charged once, and they trundled slowly, there was cut-off time, they trundled slowly and slowly and slowly down, and of course Peter's equation had a slight error in it, you could actually do it. So the equation has now been changed again. And this is what we like. We like the kids or the teams trying to beat us. And they invariably do in one phase of the event or not. And these are the Houston boys. I'm from Houston, and that's down in Mississippi or Missouri. They were so lovely, they were so shy, but they just had a major film by, is it National Geographic, which is now going around America. And the big thing about this film is it's narrated by Jeff Bridges, which I think that's not important who narrated it. But they were a lovely bunch of kids. We had a team once from Houston, Texas, who were autistic. Now there's sort of jack in the boxes to try and organise. They were so animated and so bright. It was a joy to have them as well. Okay, here we go. How are we going, all right? We now make the cruisers do a few tests. They get points for how much baggage they can put in, okay? They have to do 3-point turns. And then Professor John Story's handbrake test. Put them on a slope, put an egg behind the tyre, and you drive off without breaking the egg. Now the director of the event said, you're not going to do that. This is in the centre of Adelaide, King William Square. That's taking it down to stupidity. Well, it attracted the biggest crowd, so we're going to do it again on 2 wheels next time. So they finally won again, but it's a different vehicle. Another fantastic event for them. Next one. Oh, there it is. That's now running around the streets of Amsterdam. Yeah. And meanwhile, Newen won again. Off we go. By the way, no matter what we do, we can't keep them from having a high average speed. The average speed is 91.75. When there was no limitation on batteries, they set a record of 141 kilometres an hour, because then the Northern Territory did not have a speed restriction. I believe some of it has had it taken off. And they went through the course covering every hour 102 kilometres an hour. So whatever we do, they still get faster and slipperier and sort of defeat us. Because we don't want them to go too fast, because stability can be a problem if you've got crosswinds or willy-willies coming at you. Next one. But it was a good event, because the other Dutch team was just behind, and the Japanese over here, Phil, was just behind that. So we had, and the Americans, poor old Michigan, they had the biggest crew and support team you've ever seen. Trucks and trucks, because they are, of course, Detroit and the automotive, and they try so hard to win, but they never get it right. They never get it right. Ignore that one. That's. I'll just pay homage to Martin Green, who has his laboratory in University of New South Wales, and he really is a king of the development of photovoltaics. Actually, in 1977, when CSIRO asked me to set up a battery group, they said, you've got a choice, batteries or photovoltaics. Well, I have to say, thank God I took batteries, because Martin is quite remarkable, what he's done there at University of New South Wales, fellow of the Royal Society, blah, blah, blah. So this is, don't take any notice of it, but this is just showing how all different companies and all different types of photovoltaics, the efficiency is going up and up and up and up, but usually at some cost. Next one. So what's happened is, in 2013, as we go across, we've had to reduce the array, and that's for non-silicon, and this is for the gallium arsenide, and this is for the other type. So we've had to reduce the array down, because otherwise the cars will be getting, well, we wouldn't see any. We wanted to demonstrate that you can do as much with less. All the time this event is getting as much from as little. Next one. Next one is the batteries. Here, this is just for lithium ion, so you can see how lithium ion's gone from 40 down to 20 watt-hours per kilogram, and of course the mobile companies wanted to go more and more lighter and to get thinner and thinner bendy mobile phones. What of the future when it comes to batteries? This is again where I get extremely cross with the press and the media saying there's been major breakthroughs in batteries, which is mean we're going to solve the South Australian problem, we're going to have big plants everywhere all over. There has been no major breakthrough in batteries. In this aspect, there has in lead acid, but that's the ultra battery, which is a separate thing. It's not for cars. It's really for stationary storage. Well, it's for little hybrid cars. There has been no break, and I can't see. I think lithium ions actually reached its limit when it comes to watt hours per kilogram. They are making them cheaper, but they're making them cheaper by actually changing the components in there, which makes they're not going to last as long. They don't tell you that. I've just been in China to 3 huge battery factories, and they make them cheaper, but they're not going to last as long. Check your warranty. The only battery that probably could do it, it's very complicated, is lithium sulfur, and it could go up to 350, at least 50% more. The problem is that lithium ion just has a simple voltage, it doesn't decline very much, but lithium sulfur, the chemistry is very, very difficult. It goes through all these compounds, all with different voltages, and then when you want to recharge it, it doesn't go back the same way. So there is a big scientific challenge for lithium sulfur. CSIRO is doing some of that. Unfortunately, the battery group was sort of disintegrated when I left. It was called reorganisation. Yes, we don't go into it, do we? So, this year, I'm hoping that someone will put lithium sulfur into the event, and I've set this as the limit, okay? If they do, next one, fingers crossed they're going to work. I've finished my talk, except that how many do you have time? Okay. 5 minutes. I just wanted to read out actually what I write about this event, because I can never remember it, and I get all emotional when I read this. So you don't mind if I do. The pills are wearing off as well. Solar cars test the ultimate boundaries of energy efficiency. They demonstrate the possibilities that reside deeper into the future. In essence, they show how much more can be done with how much less. The concepts that are continuously honed, as we've seen, to perfection in the World Solar Challenge undoubtedly contribute to the automotive industry's efforts to reduce its carbon footprint. Ford, General Motors, Honda's, Nissan, Michelin, Toyota have all participated. Now we come to Tesla. The story goes that Stanford have always been in the event, a very nice bunch of people, very clever people, not necessarily out to win. They want to win, but they're always trying out new materials, graphene, whatever it might be. Their panel last year was covered with the glass that you have on your mobile phones. It was because you don't want any ridges in that panel, you don't want any shadows, you want the car to slip through. As we know, in an automobile, the energy goes out as the petrol, goes out as heat, it goes out pushing the car along the road against rolling resistance and against the wind. So it's very slippery. Now, it so happened that Elon Musk of Tesla also went to Stanford University. And he happened to catch up with the solar car team. And that gave him an idea to have his first electric car, the Roadster, which wasn't a success. But now he has the Tesla. And now he sends his people. He wouldn't sponsor the event. We look for sponsors. We have to. I think it's getting so expensive with safety and marshalling and keeping everybody happy down the road. He wouldn't do it, but he said, I'll send out some people to help you. Well, they may not have helped you, but what they were there was to recruit. I was going to say something else about Tesla. Oh yes, it so happens the CEO of CSIRO, Larry Marshall, is now from Stanford as well. So I suggested it would be a nice idea if he got Elon Musk out to the World Solar Challenge and blah blah blah. It didn't work, unfortunately. But the Tesla, we'll wait and see. He's trying to do a Henry Ford, of course, by building millions and millions of cars. He hasn't produced many yet. Electric cars out in the desert. So I think time will tell. But yes, Because when you realise there'll be about 7,000 or 8,000 little tiny cells, lithium cells, in that car, running that car around. I hope none of them short. Right, so there's strong evidence that the innovations on display in the World Solar Challenge are at the heart of all electric cars, whether they be powered by hybrid engines, fuel cells with hydrogen, or batteries alone. But my joy about this event, apart from going through the lovely countryside of the centre of Australia, is that the students, scientists, engineers and enthusiasts who design and build these cars they really do gain a deep understanding of the importance of energy efficiency and how it can be achieved. And I think so, all these people that come, all these young lads and ladies that come from around the world, I think in doing so they're unlikely to forget what probably would have been one of the most thrilling adventures in their life. And after all, these are the people, the sort of people that we want to shape our future. And with that, I'll finish.
Well, gentlemen, we have time for questions. Alan.
I only wish that my eldest daughter was here to listen to your talk. I congratulate you on it.
Thank you.
She was involved with the very first one when she was
Really? Which school?
Chisholm.
Oh, Chisholm. Oh, I can tell you about Chisholm.
And she had a wonderful experience, and she went on to reach some quite high heights in the automotive engineering, especially
Really?
on drive shafts and etc. She ended up in 2004 as managing director of Unidrive at Clayton. Then went to China for 2.5 years as the co-director and technical director for Shanghai Drivelines. She had spent time in the US when Unidrive designed the prop shaft for the Chevy Corvette, and ended up in charge of ASEAN and other countries in Southeast Asia. I'm hoping to send her the DVD when I can get it.
Is there a DVD of this?
You need DVD.
What about image rights?
We don't have any money, David. We've got
Free lunch.
Thank you once again.
Well, thank you. Well, can I speak to you afterwards? Because what you're telling me now is great, but it also upsets us because we want these stories. I mean, the Australian government, Bob Hawke said good luck, I think in 1987 or whatever it was, the Australian government doesn't support it in any way. You know, and there are lots of these stories out there. And this is what we want. When I got seconded to run a big battery consortium in North Carolina, and I had to go up to Detroit and ask for some money, and I went with my American president, who was very formal, stiff collars and everything. They said, "Now behave yourself." I said, "Oh, no." So I went in there, and they were very tough, and the other fellow was in charge of the other consortium, which was doing advanced batteries, and he was being just difficult. So he said, "Well, I'll send my chief engineer in to talk to you if you like." And she came in, threw her arms around me and gave me the biggest hug ever. She was from the Sunracer team, Molly Brennan, and we got $1 million. So that's lovely. Can I talk to you afterwards about that? I'm sure that the event director, Chris Selwood, who's just got an Order of Australia, I might add, would be very, very pleased to hear that. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, by the way, Chisholm, we didn't finish up in the centre of Adelaide. We finished up at Jepps Cross, and there's a hill at Jepps Cross, and Chisholm had a catamaran, and I could see it coming. Well, we got out and pushed it over the hill, and it trundled down. I can now declare that.
Is there any chance with Tesla, future electric cars, overcoming the fire risk in an accident?
Well, good question. I mean, you can't put a lithium. I mean, I've had discussions with Qantas on planes just recently about that. Their idea is to put the flaming laptop in a bucket of water in the loo. But there you go. Or they show you an extinguisher which is made in Dingley and not right. It's very difficult to put a lithium fire out. salt, sodium chloride. I shouldn't really be scaring people so much like this, because you might get back and I might get a rude letter from somebody or a solicitor. But it is a problem. Lithium is a problem. You know, the person who slipped his mobile down by the side of his seat, put it back, cracked open, and it caught fire. They will have every security possible. Every security possible. And just hope it works. But they've all. What happens if a steel rod, as it did on Washington Bridge, went through and shorted out the cells? It is a problem. So I really can't answer that question. But I'm hoping, and they will find a reasonable way to maximise the safety of those.
I did see a small, just briefly saw a thing in the paper that Richard Hammond from Top Gear was driving the next model Tesla. Had an accident, it exploded, and they couldn't put the fire out.
No, you can't. You can't. Because it gives off oxygen. The reaction gives off oxygen, so it feeds on itself. It's like a Roman candle. You know? It's very difficult to put nickel cadmium out. Fire brigade at Darwin couldn't do it.
Roger. David, you gave us the indication of the cost of one of those cars, I think GMH. What would be the sort of average cost of these cars? And secondly, what's the cost of the entry for a car to go into the race?
Yeah. I don't deal in that aspect. I think it used to be about $10,000 for organisations and less for schools, about $10,000. Okay? I think it's on the web probably. I don't. Yeah. But the cars, well, it depends. You know, you can never really say how much. For instance, Tokai are partnered with Panasonic for starters, and a lot of these companies give in kind rather than in cash. But most of the top cars will need a budget of $2 to $3 million probably. But they'll get it. I mean, Michigan have got about 150 sponsors from, you know, Kentucky Fried Chicken and things like that. But, you know, it doesn't mean that we have lots of school teams. Sadly, not as many Australian school teams as we used to have. Perhaps they're hard at work doing exams now or something. But you can do it quite reasonably. But so I would say anywhere from the top ones, the schools and some of the Indians, probably down at about $200,000, and then of course that may include travel as well. You see, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Lord Gamble, has there been any research or advanced research on perpetual motion?
I hope not.
With regard to the automotive industry,
I'm sorry, there's not such a thing as perpetual motion. It defeats the first law of conservation of energy. I have had people... See, the trouble is working for CSIRO, you get paid very little, that's the first problem. You get overmanaged now, which is the second problem. But the third problem is a member of this electorate can talk to his or her MP on something. I've got a new... And it gets filtered through to CSIRO. It might be birds, it might be slugs in the garden, or it's usually batteries, and it comes through to me. And I've got to try and answer these things which are just too silly to even comprehend. And they used to come to the lab, and they used to come, you know, now we have securities, and they used to come and sort of knock on my door and try and get rid of them. But there was one time down when we were in Port Melbourne when there was a knock on the door. But the secretary said, look, this Japanese has just turned, Japanese gentleman, he wants to talk to you about batteries. I said, don't let him in. She said, well, he's on his way. So he came in, and I'm chatting to him, and he's just got off the boat from Tasmania. Dr. Takahashi, he was the inventor of the defibrillator battery. Amazing, amazing, just come in and say hello. So sometimes it's, but yeah, it is a problem.
Yeah, Gus.
As an investor in lithium miners, is the lithium the ultimate element? What's happening down the line as far as progress?
You're an inventor in lithium?
As an investor.
Oh, investor. Well, lithium is the lowest of the alkali metals, okay? And below that, there's no metal that would, or element that would be any good. I suppose the best battery would be lithium fluorine. I'm not sure about the electrochemistry. So lithium is the ultimate in lightweight and energy, okay?
Yeah.
Down below that, of course, you've got hydrogen. Now, hydrogen's a whole new ballpark, and everybody's been saying it's the solution to the world, because not only is it energy, but it's also a vector you can move around, and it's been thought about since Captain Nemo was 20,000 leagues under the sea with Jules Verne. But then we get to the fuel cell. I started my life on fuel cells, actually working with Tom Bacon, whose fuel cell took man to the moon. In fact, I arrived at Port Melbourne CSIRO at the very minute that man walked on the moon. I had no idea they'd even gone there, because we'd been on a £10 pond boat. And that was the man who sent it up there. So, no, lithium is the ultimate in metals. There are lots of other batteries. I mean, there's aluminium batteries, there's iron batteries, there's redox batteries, there's flow-through batteries. All those are good, but they won't have the watt-hours per kilogram. Okay? And that's it. So for stationary storage, the ultra battery that we've invented can be used with wind farms and solar, big lead-acid batteries. My father put his life on them when he was a submariner, he tells me, well, he did tell me. But so weight doesn't matter and cost, but when it comes to lightweight batteries storing a lot of energy, lithium would be the ultimate in one of the electrodes. It's not quite lithium, it's lithium cobalt manganese oxide, never mind. Oh, by the way, there's another point investing in lithium, that's a good point. They say lithium is going to run out and the lithium price will go out. Well, that's possible, but there's another thing that's probably more important when it comes to lithium ion. It uses cobalt. And if you look at the price of cobalt at the moment now, it is quite high. There's been a lot of investment in cobalt. And that's why the Chinese and other people are trying to replace that cobalt, which goes into the path of the lithium electrode, with manganese and nickel. They can do that, but the battery won't last as well. So I'm not an investor advice, but you may have missed the boat actually. But,
Barry. David Barry. Is there any way you could fireproof the lithium sulfur battery, or is it?
Well, lithium ion battery, yeah. The lithium sulfur's leave out at the moment. The lithium ion, yeah. The lithium sulfur will give the same problem. Well, I suppose you can. I mean, you can fireproof it. You can put it in a big box and things like this. In an autoclave, you know. I mean, that's what they put the sodium sulfur battery in, which ran at 350. It was like a metallic bomb. But then that adds weight.
So it's still dependent on oxygen. It's not an exothermic.
What, you mean the lithium?
Yeah.
Which one, the lithium ion or lithium sulfur?
Sulfur.
Yeah, well, it's not as good as lithium oxygen actually. Lithium oxygen would be the ultimate, but there's one problem with the oxygen electrode. You can't reverse it. You can't really reverse a fuel cell which works on hydrogen and oxygen. The resistance of turning oxygen into hydroxide and then turning it back again is just too high, so the voltage goes down. So that's lithium oxygen. There are some people trying to do it in a certain university, and I wish them good luck, but no. So you can never have a fuel cell is basically the reverse electrolysis of water. Okay, put hydrogen in, oxygen in, get water out, get electricity. Okay. Problem with hydrogen, you've got to make it. If you make it, the way it's mainly made is from methane, natural gas. Well, you've got CO2 again. So if you're going to make hydrogen from something nice and clean, hydroelectricity or geothermal power. Now, not everybody's got mountains, or New Zealand's got a lot of hot water out there. Yes.
Alan, one last question.
Well, I've got two here. I'm enjoying this. I'm feeling better, actually. I've had a virus since March. This is a great cure for me.
David, when the lithium-ion battery is at the end of its useful life, is anything recoverable?
Good question. There's very little lithium in it to recover the lithium. Lithium's very expensive to make, and it's very expensive to extract that. I've asked that question repeatedly, and I never get a straight answer. People say they do recycle. Of course, lead acid is the most recycled product in the world, 97%, more than aluminium, or glass or paper, and that's the strength of lead acid. But I don't know, and there's been actually some pretty problems that Johnson Controls, because hybrid cars, there's various types, there's the micro, all the way up to the pure hybrid, because they want more voltage, they want to go to 48 volts, which means you've got less current, you can take out the copper and things like that. And if you want to quadruple a lead acid battery, or quadruple a lead acid battery is going to be very heavy. So they're starting to mix lithium with lead acid. Now, when you put lithium and lead acid through a hammer mill, when you're breaking batteries of lead acid, there's a lovely thing on YouTube of an almighty explosion. I mean, you know, it really was. So if they start breaking up lithium ion, there's a possibility, I would have thought, that they won't fully discharge. So there would be a case of, you know, explosion. But I'm not an expert in that area, and I can't get any straight answers from lithium people on it. But how do we all dispose of our batteries? Well, we don't, because when I got my first iPhone, CSIRO gave to me, I said, how do I replace the battery? And they said, you don't. So presumably Apple know what they're doing and whatever. Phil, quick one. This is going to be the difficult one.
What's going to be the ultimate battery for storing the electricity coming from our rooftop panels?
I would think, if you were, it depends what the factors are. Life, warranty, cost, size, position, not in the sun, you know. Some people are putting lithium batteries directly in the sun. They don't tell you, Tesla doesn't tell you, you've got to keep that battery below 45 degrees. And it's got to have active cooling, either water going round or fan going round. I would put my money, if it was me, I would either put it on Dirol lead acid, okay, and even Steve Hawking has lead acid batteries in his wheelchair, and an advanced one, a gel battery, or, and that's if you're out in the farmer, gel batteries are fine, or I would look very closely at the lithium iron phosphate, which is only 3.2 volts, and it's quite rugged. So I would prefer that. And in fact, John Story, my colleague on the science faculty, runs remotely his experimental setup in Antarctica, and he uses lithium iron phosphate. So, yeah, but I wouldn't want a lot of lithium batteries on my weatherboard house, which has got cladding on, but not that sort of
Gentlemen, I forgot to say in my introduction of David that he is a Beaumaris resident. He's been here for 45 years.
75.
A lot of years, and hopefully when he slows down, if he ever does, from his various commitments like this, we might get him to become a member of this club. He's expressed a bit of interest.
My son's a member of the club. Oh, well, that's the Sandringham Club, sorry. It's rich.
Just one last question, and we can put the answer to this in the next newsletter. The next Solar Car Challenge is in October, and last time there was an app which you could tune into to get the results. The event lasts about 5 or 6 days, and maybe you could give that to me and we'll put it in our next newsletter.
Well, when it comes out, it's the South Australian Tourism Board running it, and so they only think of the next
people
day.
who are interested can watch the progress of the race, and it's always pretty keenly informed.
Can I just say something? I don't know, has anybody been down the Stewart Highway here? Yeah, it's wonderful, isn't it? So if anybody's planning to do it, a good time to do it is when those cars are going down. It's quite remarkable.
I'll now ask John Howe, who is also a former CSIRO officer.
Is he? Oh,
yes,
you should have warned me about that. You're going to report me now. I don't care.
Gentlemen, Dr. David,
Thank you.
I am recipient of the Stokes Award. Man from CSIRO. I thought, oh, another boring bull. You've been a great pleasure.
Thank you.
To talk to us.
You're only telling me that because you're CSIRO as well.
I've been with CSIRO, I've seen some of the boffins there. So you've done us well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you very much.